Hello, and welcome to More to the Story with Molly White, where we talk about what the abortion industry doesn't want you to know. And we have another great guest today that's going to be talking about some of those very important things as it's related to the abortion drugs and other research. But before we get started and me introducing my awesome co-host, Mary Browning, I'm just going to give a shout out to our show sponsor, Dr. Stephen Hotze with the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. Again, like I say every time, if you want to stay healthy, then you need to be contacting Dr. Hotze with the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. It's better to stay healthy than be sick and try to get healthy again, in my opinion. And so, Mary, please come in and say hello to everyone.
Thank you, Molly. It's good to be on the show again with you today. I am excited about our guest, and we will give a little trigger warning for those that are listening today. If you find yourself having an emotional reaction to the information you're hearing, we think of that as an invitation to another level of healing. And we invite you to call the H3 helpline at 866-721-7881, and they can connect you with some post-abortion recovery resources, and we encourage you to do that. Today, as Molly mentioned, our guest is very special. Her name is Tessa Cox, and she works with the Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is a research institute with a wealth of information that is accessible to us. So, with that, shall we bring in Tessa?
Hello, Tessa, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you, especially when we get to talk about what the abortion industry doesn't tell women. And I think today one of our topics is going to be about the abortion drugs. So please kind of tell us, because I know y'all have done some research. Please tell us what's interesting and what you're finding out.
Yes. So we've done a lot of research on the abortion pill over the years. And you're right, there's a lot of information that the abortion industry doesn't want women to know. Women are often told that the pill is safe, that it's just going to be like having a normal period. And for too many women, that is not the case. And that is not what they experience. And one of the pieces of bad advice that women are often given by the abortion industry. We see abortion advocates saying this online, telling women this, is that when you go to the emergency department after having had a chemical abortion, you don't need to tell the doctor there what's going on. You can just lie and say that you're having a miscarriage, and the doctor doesn't need to know, which is terrible advice and not something that you would be told for anything else. Don't tell your doctor the whole truth. But we know that this is the advice that a lot of women are getting. And so we wanted to dig into this a little bit and see how often is this happening? And if it is happening, is that impacting the types of emergency department visits that we're seeing? And so for this particular study, we looked at data from the states that use their own tax dollars to fund abortions for Medicaid eligible women. So not federal Medicaid, but that state Medicaid that is sadly used to cover abortion in many states. And it was from that we were able to get this view of all of these abortions that are being paid for, and then the emergency department visits that are happening afterward.
So are you able to follow the records, or how do you correlate, with the amount of abortions that women are having and then the amount of emergency room visits? How do you connect those dots?
So one of the strengths of doing the type of study that we did is that we are able to make that connection in the data between the abortion and then between the emergency department visit. So these records are generated based on claims from the abortion center, from the hospital that are requesting reimbursement from Medicaid. And we can't identify any particular patient. All we just see is basically the billing data. But we can see that bill for an abortion, and then we can follow it out for 30 days and see if there are any bills for emergency department visits. And then we can look at what was the emergency department visit for, and how severe or complex was it. And we found two really striking things in this study, starting with that chemical abortion and then following it out to see if there were any emergency department visits. We found that by the end of the study period, the most recent data that we had in 2016 to 2021, nearly 84% of abortion-related emergency department visits after chemical abortions were getting miscoded as miscarriages.
Mm.
And then we found that if a visit was miscoded as a miscarriage, it was 50% more likely to be coded as high acuity, high severity and complexity compared to other abortion-related visits that were not miscoded. So it's a big problem, and it is associated with this higher level of acuity, this higher level of severity and complexity compared to the other visits, which of course flies in the face of women being told by the abortion industry that it's just the same as having a miscarriage and that you don't need to give your doctor the truth.
Wow.
I would just like to pause and underscore what you're saying, Tessa, because that is so incredible. That the more severe the impact or the complications were for the women or the girls, the more likely it was coded as a miscarriage versus the abortion pill. Is that correct?
Yes, so if the visit were miscoded as a miscarriage, that meant that it was more likely to be coded as these highest levels of severity and complexity. So, and you're right. So we're just looking at the billing data. So we don't know everything that's going on under the surface. We don't know all of the care that the patient is getting, or whether the doctor didn't even ask whether it was an abortion, or whether someone made a mistake in the medical records. But we can see that this is happening more and more frequently, that it's now accounting for a majority of abortion-related emergency department visits, and that when it does happen, it's more likely that the visit is more severe. So all of that is really concerning, and just both for women's health and for even being able to know what's going on with abortion safety and what the risks actually are.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm just kind of thinking, what was, and do you have data on the amount of miscarriages annually, normal miscarriages versus what's going on now? I'm sure there's got to be an increase in the numbers of miscarriages that are happening because of the abortion drug. But, like a regular miscarriage, I don't know, do you have any statistics on how severe they are? Because I've had a miscarriage. I didn't end up in the ER. I didn't hemorrhage. I didn't get sepsis. I didn't, suffer that away. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's research that you can do side by side. Like, this is a normal miscarriage, normally don't end up in ER rooms, versus all of the abortion drug, quote unquote, miscarriages.
Yes, that's a great question. And so that's not something that we looked at specifically in this study, because all of the emergency department visits that we looked at were related to an abortion, even if they got miscoded down the line as miscarriages. But that's a question that a lot of people have been asking, which is, if this miscoding is happening, and if it's happening with increased frequency, are we seeing these upticks in reported miscarriages, some of which are probably actually abortions? And that's something that we'd like to dig into. There have been papers published for a long time, coming up with ways that you can try to estimate what percentage of miscarriages that are getting diagnosed in the emergency room are actually abortions. And so I think that would be really interesting to dig into and see, are these abortions driving up the apparent miscarriage rate because they're getting miscoded when women go to the emergency room?
I know that Molly knows this, but just last week I was talking to a woman who's a director of a pregnancy resource center, a women's health clinic in Texas, and she had taken a woman who was aborting from the pill to the ER. And when the woman told the nurse, I'm having an abortion. I took the pill and I'm having trouble. The nurse actually looked at her and said, "Oh, honey, don't say that. We'll call that a miscarriage, and you never have to tell anybody that again." And so, if the medical profession is like co-opting into this misinformation, that's you wouldn't know that necessarily, but the miscoding does indicate there is somebody that's talking about. Is it the medical professional? Is it the women and girls being coached to say this is a miscarriage? I didn't take the pill, or I haven't. Just saying it's a miscarriage, and it's fascinating study that you did. Do you know the numbers of how many people are in your study?
So, well, like you said, it could be the doctor or the nurse that's giving a woman bad advice, because we don't know for sure exactly where the miscoding happened, but we do know that some large medical organizations like ACOG are giving women or giving doctors the advice that they don't have to ask about whether the woman is coming into the emergency room for an abortion or a miscarriage. And so, if doctors are being given this impression that it doesn't really matter and you don't have to ask the patient, then it makes sense that that is the sad experience that your friend had, which is the nurse acting as if it doesn't matter. But no one has really taken the time to study, well, does it matter? Does it impact the care that women get? And so that's why it's really concerning that all of this advice is out there, that everyone from large medical organizations to Planned Parenthood is saying that there's no difference, but no one has really dug into, is there a difference? And so there's definitely the need for more research, but we wanted to at least start by measuring, well, how big is the problem? How often is this miscoding happening? And so in regards to your question about, well, how many emergency department visits are we talking about here? We divided the study into two separate time intervals, so that we could compare, has this been increasing? What's been going on over the past decade or so? And so between 2004 and 2015, we looked at around 21,000 emergency department visits after chemical abortion. And then between 2016 and 2021, we looked at a little over 12,000 that were included in the study. And so not all of those were related to abortion necessarily. And that's why we further refined and asked the question, well, what did the woman go to the emergency department? Was it a broken leg, or was it because she was having an abortion complication? And so we looked at those codes that were specific to having an abortion complication, and then focused on how many of those were miscoded.
You can probably tell about how many days had passed since she took the pill and ended up in the ER, because normally it's just a day or two. Is that correct?
It often is, but if you look at the FDA label for mifepristone, we know that some women can have bleeding for weeks after the abortion. So it can really just be dependent on each individual case. But for this study, because we wanted to be sure that the emergency department visits that we were looking at were related to the abortion, and so we had a 30-day cutoff and looked at all ER visits after the abortion, so that we knew that we were looking at the abortion and not a subsequent pregnancy or anything like that.
Right.
That's good.
And of course, there's probably no research out there yet correlating drug abortions and, lifelong maternal health risks. Are they going to be able to get pregnant again? Do they have damage to their uterus or cervix, or what even can the effects be on future children with those kind of drugs? I don't know, or even her own health. So I'm sure there's nothing out there yet, but we need to be looking into that, I'm sure, sometime or another.
Yes, and definitely doing those sorts of like the long-term longitudinal studies to see what are the long-term ramifications? And that's a question that we've been asking, and we're still doing the research, so I don't have the answer yet. But looking at those complications in future pregnancies after chemical abortion or after surgical abortion, and seeing how the rates can differ depending on the type of complication that you're looking at. And so I think you're absolutely right that that's something that's important to dig into, and to make sure that women are fully informed and know the risks.
That's absolutely, and that's what we want to do, is try to fully
Yes.
inform women, because we care about your health, we care about your mental and physical well-being, and we don't want you being a victim of the abortion industry, which is going to, they want your money and they don't want you to have a baby. And it's just criminal. It's medically negligent. And if it's coming from the upper levels of the medical industry and siding with the abortion industry, causing this all misrepresented data, I mean, it's just criminal if you ask me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you're right, women being fully informed. And that's something else that we're hoping to dig into, and looking at this issue of informed consent. Because, I mean, you're an expert. Informed consent for abortion. So many women historically have not been fully informed. And now it's even worse when we have these chemical abortions happening without a woman ever even having a visit with a doctor. You can get online, you can order the pills from wherever, have them mailed to you. And I mean, we've heard stories of people getting the pills and trying to give them to someone without their knowledge and consent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really does call into question, well, are women being given all of the information that they should be provided? And so that's something that we've been looking at what women are saying online about their experiences, and hoping to begin to get a better idea of what is the information that women want and need. And as they're looking back, what do they wish they would have known before they made that decision to take the abortion pill?
That's powerful, Tessa. Thank you for thinking to delve into that at the Lozier Institute. And I do want our listeners to know that they can access your library. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So all of our research we put on our website, which is lozierinstitute.org. But we also have a research database that that we use to just make our research, other people's research, the whole peer-reviewed literature available to people that are really trying to dig into the issues and need information that's easy to find. And so we've called that Lozier Library. And anyone who's interested can sign up for that on our website. And you can get access to the library and see all of the research that's been organized into different subjects, to make it easy to find what you're looking for. Because so often people are writing an article in a hurry or trying to inform themselves on an issue. And so we try to cut out some of the work and make the research a little bit easier to find.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. So, and it is important. I mean, that's one of the tactics of the abortion industry, is not to inform women of the risks involved no matter what type of abortion procedure they're going to have, because that would reduce the numbers of abortions a great deal. If women were fully informed and made a medically healthy choice, then they would not be going through abortion most of the time. So, in the consent, I mean, I know you've been doing research. What kind of websites, what kind of online presence do you go to find out, women talking about this? Where do you find some of that?
So there are a lot of different websites where women will talk about their experiences with abortion and with the abortion pill specifically. And so we've been looking at what women are saying online, and the sorts of questions that they're asking when they go online, they go to these online communities. What information are they looking for? Women who are in the middle of an abortion at home and are frantically searching for information, searching for support. And so we've been digging into just what women are out there searching for. And then we've also conducted a survey to ask women a little bit more directly women who have had chemical abortions about their experience, about the information that was provided to them, and about what they wish would have been provided to them, so that we can combine the two and really get a better understanding of um, what um, what information are women being given, and what do they wish that they would have known.
That's awesome. I think, Mary, that's something that we should add to our own declarations, those type of questions, something that we should consider, because the Justice Foundation and Operation Outcry does have a declaration that you can go to if you've had an abortion, and it's a questionnaire about your experience. And this information, you can share your name, you can share just part of your name, but the information really is used for educational purposes, for legal, for legislation, for the courts. It could even be used for research like that with the Charlotte Lozier Institute,
Mm.
So it's important, if you've had an abortion in your past, to share that information. And just like Tessa said, what did you not know? What were you told not to? What
Mm.
were told? What kind of effects did that abortion have on you? Because this information is so important, so that we can use it to educate and prevent other women from making a choice that they probably would regret if they weren't fully consented.
Yes.
That's a great idea, Molly.
We've we've read some I've read some of the declarations and information that have been shared, and used it to inform the research, and obviously not using anyone's names or any identifying information or anything like that, but it's definitely powerful for making sure that women's experiences and women's stories are being included and are driving what we know about women's experiences with abortion. So thank you for providing a platform where people can share their experience and what really happened.
Absolutely. That's the very reason why I filled out a declaration. It's because I wanted people to know what you made legal or they made legal, how it impacted me, and how the abortion industry did not give me full disclosure, full consent, even proper medical care. So that was my motivation, and it was to prevent other women from going through the same trauma that myself and Mary and many others have gone through. It's not, it's a lifelong trauma when you have an abortion, and that's why we're doing what we do. We want to protect women. We want to educate women. Go ahead, Mary.
So if someone is listening and they want to find out how they can fill out a declaration, you can go to operationoutcry.org, and there'll be an opportunity to fill out a declaration right there, and that'll be sent in to us. And we would appreciate it if you did. Go on record with your experience. We have a lot of women who have gone on record with their experience of harm, and we are looking for more reports of what the real experience is. So thank you for thinking about the ways in which we might work with the Lozier Institute, because we've had someone mining our information and categorizing it in different ways. So we may want to see if there's something that could be useful for you at the Lozier Institute.
Right.
I know, Tessa, you have a colleague that recently wrote about mifepristone and whether about the misinformation about the drug itself. Do you want to tell our listeners about that a little bit?
This came to mind because this is yet another of the lies that we hear from the abortion industry, the myths that we hear so often, which is that mifepristone is safer than Tylenol, it's safer than aspirin, it's safer than name your drug. Someone's probably made the argument. And so one of my colleagues decided to dig into that, and he looked into those claims, where they were coming from, the sources that people were citing to support them. And he found that there's a big issue with making that sort of claim. And the predominant issue is that according to the FDA, you can't even really compare a drug unless it's for the same purpose. And so no one's taking Tylenol to have an abortion. And so it's just making an apples to oranges comparison. But beyond that, there are huge issues with comparing the two drugs. Viagra is another one that's often mentioned, because you're looking at very different populations. And then, healthy young women who are having abortions versus, in the case of Viagra, older men who are likely to have cardiovascular problems. And then the data is not the same. We know the problems with abortion data, but a lot of the data that's cited for the other drugs is coming from very old studies, different time periods, differently designed studies. And so the data just isn't there to make any sorts of claims about safety. Even if you could compare two completely different drugs that are given to completely different people for completely different purposes, there isn't the data to make any sort of safety claim. And then we know from our own research that so many abortion complications are just going unreported, with women either not disclosing to the doctor not reporting it accurately. And so abortion complication data is just completely unreliable. But that study is available on our website as well, if anyone wants to dig into it. And he thoroughly addresses each claim. And so if you're interested in where these claims originated and what the underlying evidence is, that's available on our website.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I just want to mention to our listeners and our viewers, if you're being told, if you're going to an abortion clinic or even online and they're telling you it's safer than Tylenol, but if you have emergency complications and you have to go to the ER, then lie about what's going on, that you took the drug, that should send some red flag warnings out there. You should immediately stop and thought, no, this is not right. And like Tessa said, how can you compare Tylenol? You don't take Tylenols to have an abortion. You take them for a headache or muscle aches or something, and taking a drug that's going to kill the living child growing in you, that's serious. That's a very dangerous drug. In fact, I believe Louisiana passed a law saying that the mifepristone was a dangerous drug.
Yes. Controlled substance. Yes.
Yeah, a controlled substance type drug. And so we just want to thank you, Tessa, and the Lozier Institute for doing all this research and taking interest, caring about women and our health. That's truly the heart of groups like yours. It's not to go after the abortion industry. It's to get real data. It's to protect women and their unborn children and protect our health, not only our physical but our spiritual, our mental. Because it all entwines together. And so we really appreciate that. I think real quick, we only have a couple of minutes left. Go ahead, Mary.
Something you said really triggered a question for me, Molly, and that was when you talked about women. It reminded me that the FDA has no limit to how old someone can be to access to take the abortion drug. And so I was wondering, Tessa, if in your data, if you've looked at how many of those complications or those cases were minors that were taking the drug versus adult women.
Good question. And so we didn't break it down by age in this particular study, but we know that minors are getting access to these drugs, and especially the fact that they're so widely available online now, with little oversight. And I mean, women are ordering the drugs before they're even pregnant, and then can potentially share them with a friend. So there's really no way of knowing for sure where any abortion pill that's dispensed ends up. And definitely they can fall into the wrong hands. And I mean, there have been stories in the news about young women, minors, feeling pressured into abortion because a relative was able to get them online and then pressure her into taking them. And so it's a real problem. And I think it's going to be a growing problem too.
It's a very big problem. And Mary and I have talked about this and had guests on our show about this. You don't even know how far along, how often are women wrong about their gestational age. You're further along than you think. Or you don't know if it's an ectopic pregnancy, or you don't know what your health is like. Do you have cardiac issues? Do you have, any other kind of physical issues that this drug could adversely affect? I mean, it's just absolutely insane that it's approved to be on the market as willy-nilly as it is. Like you said, it's almost like you can go to a bubblegum machine and put in your quarters and get the abortion drugs. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. So, and then Tessa, I believe my Terrence wanted to know if there's any other research that you're working on.
Yes. So we have a few different things in the pipeline. So upcoming research looking on women's experiences with informed consent, which I mentioned. We want to better understand women's experiences with the abortion pill more generally. What are they saying about their experiences, especially after Dobbs? And then we have studies drawing from the same Medicaid data that we used for this study. So looking at complications in future pregnancies, looking at the different pregnancy outcomes that a woman can experience in her life, and trying to develop good ways of seeing how abortion fits into that, and then how abortion can shape the rest of a woman's life, and so seeing how that shows up in the data that we have. So lots of different things underway, and we'll put them all on our website as they get published.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Tessa, we were so thankful you came on the show for us today. I know Molly will be saying we need to wrap up, so I just want to take a minute to say thank you, and thank you for the work you and the others at Lozier Institute are doing.
Yes,
Well,
please tell them that we said thank you very much on behalf of all the women who've been hurt by abortion,
Yes.
and the men as well, and of course the babies that have been lost. We appreciate that, and whatever we can do at the Justice Foundation with our declarations, if we need to, coordinate with you about what type of questions you would like to see on a declaration, boy, we would love to work with you and gather whatever information we can to help you with that research.
Well, this has been a great interview. Opportunities for future research and collaboration. This is wonderful. But thank you so much for having me on, and for all of the good work that you're doing, because it's so important, and just so grateful that you're doing it.
Well, thank you, Tessa,
Thank
and
you, Tessa.
thank everybody again at the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Tell them we appreciate them very much. I know they probably don't hear that a lot, and we want to thank y'all, and thank you, Mary, for listening in to More to the Story with Molly White, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Yes.